Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in for the first time, you missed a pretty good show. We started off our show in segment one talking about some major wide receiver news in the NFL, who may or may not get traded, some major news surrounding Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, A.J. Brown, and some other major wide receivers there. In our second segment, we covered the fourth part of the MLB offseason files, this time talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers and their incredible offseason, what we think will be going on with them in 2024. And we just finished talking about the preview for the NHL trade deadline that is coming up on March 8th. Again, we got about a week until that. We'll keep an eye on all that stuff, and I will keep you personally updated with any major breaking news on that. But in this segment, we're going to be talking about an article on ESPN, talking about the by Tim Bontemps and Kevin Pelton, talking about the explosion of scoring in the NBA. The massive increase that we've seen in the last 10 years or so in not just the good teams, but in almost every team. But before we get too far into this segment, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of this show, all you need to do is go to streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. You can leave a message with your donation. It'll scroll across the bottom of the screen right there, just for everyone to see. We'll have a little conversation about that, and we appreciate anything you can give. Again, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you are right now, all you need to do is go to streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. We appreciate everybody so much for tuning in and for donating. But without further ado, like I said, let's get into this segment. Does the NBA have a scoring problem? This article talks about how this is the first time this season that four players scored more than 60 points in a span of 4 days. And it wasn't just that they did it on four separate days. They did it two times on 2 days, with Joel Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns scoring 70 and 62 respectively on one day, and then just 4 days later, Luka Doncic and Devin Booker scoring 73 and 62 respectively. We saw that All-Star game where the East put up 200 points, put up over 200 points for the first time, and it caused a lot of people not just to question the All-Star game, but it shows a trend of the increase of scoring, the explosion of scoring, as I keep saying. People are talking about it. We go back about 15, 20 years, the average scoring was a lot less. It's hard to hold teams under 100 now. But you go back about 20 years and that was the norm. You're seeing games and 89 to 97. You're seeing games, high scoring games back then being 110 to 105. These were super high scoring games back then, and now that's a low scoring game in the NBA. There's a nice little chart that was put together by K Pelton Charts on Instagram. It's in this article, and it shows that since 2012, in almost every year, the points per 100 possession for the entire league has gone up. Now, it took a short dip in 2015, 2018, and 2021, it looks like, but it still is almost an exponential increase. If you look at this graph, it's gone up almost 10 points per 100 possessions in the last 10 years. And there's a lot of reasons for why this might be happening. Obviously, the biggest one, and the one that people start to talk about if you're not paying attention to the NBA that much, is, do people just not try on defense? And that clearly isn't the case. There are clearly players that are trying their best on defense. These players are working their hardest, they are doing their best, but defense has become so much harder in the league. You hear people talk about back in the day how it was so much more physical and you couldn't get inside and defenses were better, which is why the scoring was less. But as much as that might be the case, I wasn't around to watch them, it was easier, in my opinion, to defend because you didn't have these guys like Steph Curry or Damian Lillard or Trae Young that you had to defend at half court. You didn't have guys like Victor Wembanyama or Chet Holmgren that are 7 feet tall and can stretch the floor the way that they do by shooting and passing, or Nikola Jokic is another great example of that. You didn't have these guys back in the day. You had dominant inside presences like Shaq. You didn't have these incredible shooters. You didn't have the amount of space that you have to cover as a defense back then. There was a stat that the average offense has had to guard 5 feet more of space. That's 5 feet more space for the offense to get open. That's 5 feet more of space, 5 feet more space for offenses to get that open man, to get those soft areas in the zone or beat their man because the defense is so spread out. It's so much harder to go and help on defense. It's so much harder, you know, to get these numbers on defense that you're getting. People aren't driving inside as much, and it's a lot cleaner in the lane. You used to be able to stack the lane a little bit, put not just one guy but two, maybe even three if you were pushing it, and kind of make that lane a nightmare to drive through. But with this spacing, with the amount of spacing that these shooters are giving teams and how everybody on the court can shoot now, it makes it so much harder. It makes it so much easier, not just to get into the lane, but to navigate inside the lane. There's so much more space for inside passes. There's so much more space to dribble around people. There used to be no space. There used to be nothing like that. And that, I think, is the biggest reason for points rising. People are making more shots. People are, really, they're just getting better at shooting. They're getting better at shooting from further, which is contributing to more space. You can make anything from anywhere. It's really, really, really hard to defend in the NBA right now. But one of the other reasons is free throws. Not only are people getting better, like I said, at shooting, so they're getting better at shooting free throws, but they're shooting more free throws than they were in the past. People talk about how physical it was, and it's not that it was any less physical, it's that, or I guess it was more physical, but that's because they were able to get away with it. You go and look at playoff games, and there was this really cool chart that I was looking at that shows in the playoffs all these offensive numbers go down. It was a chart that was going from 1978 to 2022, and it showed in every single offensive category, whether that be points, whether that be offensive efficiency, these advanced analytics as well, they go down in the playoffs. And I'm trying to figure out the reason why. One of those reasons why is that the players say, that Drew Holiday says, is because the way that it's reffed. You're not getting as many free throws. You're able to get away with a little more in the playoffs. They let you play. They have, they let you have a little more leeway in the NBA. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that scoring's gone up, right? Sometimes that leads to some super entertaining results. But on the other end, sometimes it seems like it's impossible for the defense and it's just a shooting contest. And it's not always like that. In tight games, when it's 150 to 149, we love those. But when it's blowouts 150 to 103, then it feels a little excessive. And that's always how it feels in a blowout. But I'm curious if it might not feel that way if it was 100 to 70, That's the big thing. I am all for scoring. I really am. And I don't think there's an easy fix to this. I don't think there's oh, do this and the scoring will go down. There's a lot of theories out there that I've heard that expanding the league might, spread the talent out more, lead to less scoring, and we've seen something like that happen when the last time they expanded the league, the scoring took a big hit, and then it's slowly climbed up since then. So that might be something you can do, not only to decrease the scoring if the scoring really is a problem, which I think it isn't yet, but if it continues on the way that it is, you're going to start seeing 200-point games by teams in the next 10 years if nothing changes. And that is going to get a little ridiculous. But you look at some scoring, you look at teams that are, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. You look at expanding. That not only is good for this scoring problem that is starting to develop here in the NBA, but it also, we've talked about this before with the other issues with the NBA, players resting. It's good for the business, because the NBA, the big solution for the big problem with regular season games in the NBA is to play less games. And as a business, you're never going to do that. But expanding, not only might that help this issue, but it's something that's in the purview of the NBA. It's going to benefit them. It's going to make them more money. So that is what I think is the best solution to solve this. Not only would it give us more teams, more excitement, more money for the NBA, but it would probably decrease scoring because talent would be more spread out again. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I'll put the link to that article in the description of this video and of the clip here. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on solutions. If you think it's an issue, what you would like to see done, let me know. But thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I appreciate everybody listening, tuning in, participating in the show. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.